um, they got the crowd to like, not the crowd, the community to get information gathered and crowdsource that. And I thought that's smart too.
Did it have a really good search feature?
Um, it wasn't. I could search for things. It could be better. I don't think it was as good as like maybe some software stuff where you can just, you know, Google or quickly find an FAQ. But I could go to like a file menu and see all the uploaded files and search through there by a keyword if I wanted to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think we'll just get started and see if people come in a little later. So, I'm going to drop a link to my Calendly, just our typical housekeeping, in the chat. And I'll also drop it in the Slack or send out an email probably, because I want us to start scheduling those one-on-ones I was talking about. So I have availability like in the mornings and then in the evenings. So if we could try to do it, if we can't get it into September, let's try to do it into some dates into October. And just so I can meet with you for like 30 minutes and talk about where you are right now and what other resources I can provide to you, and just check in with all of you about how you're feeling. Even if you just want to complain about this year, that's fine.
Be careful what you ask for now.
I'm in a complaining state. I'm trying to be positive, but I'm like, positivity is a trap.
Nyla, do you know if the times that show up on the calendar you sent, is that in your time zone? Oh wait, I see it. I see it at the bottom. This is my time.
So what does it say for you?
So so I'm like, for the 10th, it has 10:30 a.m. and 11 a.m. Late 11 a.m. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, it adjusts to time based on where you are, because mine says Central.
Okay. Yeah, because at the bottom there's a little world and it says Eastern time.
Okay. All right. So how is everybody just feeling in general? I know I have a lot of video meetings and I always just jump into business, and I really want to hold space for people and like, just how are you feeling, whether it's professionally or whatever? How's everybody's like state of mind right now? I feel a mess.
Sounds like me. I'm all over the place. But I had a good day for, like as far as productivity, because I tried a new website called clixly.com. And I had ClickFunnels. I'm doing a language program, and it's coming together. And it's like the job stuff, I had to lay down for a while and not worry about it. And I had 2 people call me with like little jobs, but like, hey, check this out. Because everybody keeps trying to help, but they're not being helpful because I'm already doing a lot, and I'm trying to stay positive. And so, like I said, on that schedule, I'm like, the jobs just aren't there right now until you get, your portfolio and your resume and whatever. So just do that on the end of the week, not every day, because it's just overwhelming.
That's a good point. I've had a lot of people, I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn about people being really drained by the job search right now, and just trying to figure out, how do you keep looking for the jobs but not have it like totally drain you mentally, because I know it's draining. So yeah. What about anyone else? Oh, sorry.
There was one ID in Robin's group, and she was really like disgusted last month because she was not getting, it was school starting back, and she set a goal to do her portfolio, and she worked hard, and she went on a lot of interviews, came down to the last thing, but she got a job today.
Oh.
And she was like, I went on over 100. She had a spreadsheet and everything. She was really organized. And she said, I applied to 100 jobs.
Hmm.
And I finally got a job. And then there were like 2 or 3 of them that got jobs. And I was like, and they were teachers. And I'm like, I'm happy for them, but I'm like, what am I not doing? And I'm like, I know what I'm not doing. And I know she worked hard and I'm happy for her. But it's like a process, a long process. So
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to figure that out, like to get focused and get something complete because I start a lot of things and not finish them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the skills. I just need to do the application and show it, present it as, the skills can't be in my mind. They have to be presented. And
Right.
that's where I'm at.
What
Right.
part are you finding difficult in the process?
I'm not a writer and I have ADD. So to organize things, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then I keep taking on stuff. Like I'm working with this lady at a technical college to build. She actually got the job I applied for in February, and I just noticed it today. But she's using, I wanted to develop something for, like, I don't have the content. Like, I have the programs, but I don't have the content in the order to put things in. And I'm looking at, she's doing onboarding for Fayette Tech Community College here, and she ended up going with iSpring. And I'm like, I wanted to do something in storyline, because everybody's asking for storyline and articulate. And I just did a big thing in Design for Humanities for Beyond, so that's covered. We're just wrapping that one up now. But
Mm-hmm.
I look at the storyline. I'm like, okay, like even when we did the checklist, I know you said what's stopping you, and I did the checklist, and you said you only have to do like one slide, the slide with the checks on it. But that was when the storyline I ended the trial, so I couldn't get it. But I always start things and don't finish them because I'll get stuck on something.
I I have adult ADD as well, Doreen.
Oh, okay. My doctor keeps telling me, you're 61. You've lived with it all. I don't see it. You're just a little anxious. I'm like, no, I don't remember people's names. I was a teacher for 16 years. I had to, like analyze my classes and I know the symptoms well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like forgetting something once in a while. It's a whole processing, an organization, a processing. Everything had to be color coded. While I was in the classroom, that was fine. Going to higher ed, it was like crazy. Then I got it all together. Then I lost my job. So being without any parameters. And I remember somebody explained to parents like ADD is like a child walking over a bridge with no, sidings,
Mm-hmm.
and it's scary. And they go close to the edge. And it's fun sometimes to slide down, but it's scary to think about falling,
Mm-hmm.
So you need those parameters, you need those, templates, those guidelines, the step to step. And like even when I went into the idol course, there was so much information. It overwhelms me when things aren't ordered.
Mm-hmm.
Like do this first, that first, and that's why teaching was perfect for me because you came in at 7:50, and from that moment you walked in that classroom, you had something to do,
Yeah.
and it was very regulated. So this has been a learning experience, but it's like at the same time when I do finish something, it's like, wow, you did this.
So you're something that we can support you in is maybe holding deadlines for you or really making sure that, and I know you all are you have some accountability groups as well. So
Hmm.
however we can support you in you completing something, let us know and we can work together to do that because that's the point of peer mentoring as well. Christine said in the chat that she's feeling happy, and she's still looking for a new ID internship. Do you want to talk about that a little, Christine? I see that you're also going to be on some panels.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Sorry, I'm on my phone this time. As far as the panel, I think one of them is the one that I invited you to, Nyla.
Mm-hmm.
The one that you turned down. It's about women in learning. For a convention that was sponsored by D2L.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, D2L is basically an LMS used in higher education. I attended their Women in Learning webinar in August, and I got in contact with one of the panelists at that event, and I commented on how I enjoyed it, but I noticed that there weren't that many women of color in the panel, so I thought this could be improved a bit. And she really liked my idea, and she asked me if I wanted to speak at the panel, and I said sure. And then I suggested other women that could be on the panel, and Nyla was one of them.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christine. Yeah, I'm booked that day, unfortunately, but I did send it over to a couple other people to reach out to Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, yeah, that's awesome, and that's also a good way. I see you doing more panels and stuff, Christine, and I think that's really good in terms of networking and having people vouch for you in your internship search, in your job search. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen any return on that yet?
I applied for a higher education one recently. I just got the results yesterday, and of course, I didn't get the position.
Hmm. How how are you applying for those, online or through like recruiters?
Um, Online and whatnot.
And you said you want to stick to higher ed, right?
Yeah, higher ed education space,
Okay.
because that's what I'm used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
Where are you located, Christine?
I plead the fifth.
Okay. Do you want a remote internship or do you want a physical
Mostly remote,
internship?
fully remote.
Do you feel like the remote part has been a barrier?
Actually, no, it's been
I guess
a
now, no,
great.
you're right.
Yeah, I've actually a lot of experience with remote working, so it's kind of like water to me at this point,
Mm-hmm.
like flowing water. Like I could easily adapt
Mm-hmm.
to it.
I've actually found it really hard to onboard remotely with my new contract, like feel really discombobulated.
Really?
Um,
How so?
I don't know how to explain it really. Like, we have meetings all the time. I'll be on like 5 virtual meetings with these folks. So it's not that I feel disconnected from the team, but it's very nebulous. There's like no defined processes. They're like trying to rebrand, and it's a new tool that I'm using, and I'm just missing that ability to like turn and talk to someone and ask them a question real fast, or be like, "Hey, can you walk over to my desk and show me this?" You know? Um,
Oh.
and so I was working remotely before I got laid off, and that was fine because I already knew the processes. But starting in a new job, working remotely, learning new processes and a new authoring tool, it's just a lot to process.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, I'm having a lot of be careful what you wish for, because I'm like, why am I wishing I was in the office right now? Like, why? What is that
Exactly.
about? So,
Well, were they remote before COVID?
um,
I think that can make a difference.
yeah, some
That
of the
makes a huge
team,
difference.
yeah, I think some of the team was, but the majority of them weren't. And I'm trying to figure out like everything's just an all over the place, and they use Google Drive, like the Google Office products, right? Which
G Suite?
G Suite, yeah. Which is fine, but it's just like 80 different links to 80 different folders. And I'm like, I kind of miss having that drive on your desktop that you can just click on and, that stuff. So working in the cloud and working remotely, definitely an adjustment. And it's like I've done it before, but it's just also my brain may just not be working very well right now. So, yeah. Ashanti asked what new authoring tool I'm learning. I am learning to use Evolve. Have any of you heard of that before? It's by, have you heard of CatCat? It's, some of you may have seen CatCat. I'll show you CatCat. So it's by the same company. It's a totally different product, but this company called Intellum has the Learning Science Weekly newsletter, and they have this thing called, let me share my screen. And I never know how to describe what CatCat is, but it's like a curate. I don't know. How do I describe it? So they will curate learning paths, right? So you can curate content, you can curate your own content or link out to other content and create learning paths for people. So some people are totally like, if you want to learn how to be a learning experience designer, here are the 6 articles you should read, right? Or if you want to learn how to lead a virtual team, these are the articles you can do in the little learning sections that you can have. So, by the way, this is another good format and site to learn. It's another way to just like curate information, and it can serve as a knowledge base, like what we were talking about earlier. So check out CatCat because it's free. Anyone can start publishing on it. You can curate your own. You can become your own author. So if there's anything you want to share, even tips about getting into ID, that's another platform that you can build it on. But they have another product, this company called Evolve, and it's like it's HTML5 based, and it looks kind of like Rise in the same way, like Articulate Rise in the same way that you use blocks of content. If you've played with Articulate Rise before, but the learning, it's just different. It looks different. The back end of it just looks different. So I'm learning Evolve. Yeah, Christine says it's popular in the UK. I'm not really sure. So the contract I have right now is with Facebook. So I'm not really sure. I think the look of it goes along with like the Facebook branding in terms of a web landing page look. I'm not sure why they choose Evolve over something else, but yeah, it's just tricky to use, getting used to a new tool. Yeah, so does anyone else want to just lay anything out there before we move on, or any questions you had, or just something you want to get off your chest right now?
Oh, I have a question. So something, I remember this was mentioned at the first meeting that we had, and I had completely forgot about it, but you a while ago mentioned, like during that first meeting, you had mentioned that through your last job, you learned like how the ID process works in the corporate world.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to like hear more about that.
Like, you mean the actual process of like creating a learning experience, or the steps, or in general?
I'm trying to pull up Slack because I don't remember exactly.
I think you sent me a message.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Let's see. How a learning environment at a corporation works versus a nonprofit. I think that's what you were asking. So learning overall.
Yeah.
Well, I've never done formal learning through a nonprofit, so I'm not sure how it's different. But in terms of like I'll talk about a smaller corporation and then like a very, very, very large corporation. So the first, and anyone who's worked corporate, you can jump in, even if you were just taking the courses. But the first, my first foray into learning and building out learning was a freelance job for somebody who like sold their in-person training to larger companies. So I wasn't creating for a larger learning environment. I was creating a very narrow course for this one person, right? And so I didn't have any, I didn't have direct line into the corporation's learning environment. So then I moved to HEB, which is like a local grocery store here in Texas, and they're like a mid-sized company. They have a lot of employees, but they don't have like, I think Facebook has something like 40,000 or I don't know, a large amount of employees. And when I worked at Halliburton, that was 50,000 employees. So um, in the smaller learning teams, you might be doing everything yourself. Like you're an end-to-end designer. So you're doing the front end analysis and you're doing the design and development, and then you might be uploading it yourself into the LMS. And then larger teams are could be more segmented. So like right now with Facebook, there are learning designers, there are content developers, there are graphic designers. So each step goes to a different person, which I think can ultimately kind of hinder the process because you have many blockers when you have to pass off one project to four different people, right? Like something has to be totally they also have editorial. So before something can get published or put onto the platform, it has to go through five different people possibly. So when you're in a smaller company and you're doing everything yourself, you control that timeline totally yourself. When you have all those other people to go through, you all affect the timeline. And then also at HEB, I was more administrative support. I wasn't an ID then. This was before I started getting into ID, but I was doing training. Like corporate made decisions about training and sent them down to the individual stores, and there was no say on how that got implemented. It was just implemented. You took your training. You had to take this training to get onto the front lines or the cashiers. And then there was a book, a binder on how to train new employees. Everybody followed that with some little changes, right? So at Halliburton, which has 50,000 employees and 7 different product lines, we had a global team. That's what I worked on. But other product service lines had their own instructional designers using their own tools, using their own methods. So the big thing about understanding learning environments, like when you are going to interview with a job, ask about what does learning look like at XYZ corporation? And understand their philosophy for it. So at Halliburton, learning was decentralized, but we still had a global team. So understand, like, okay, if I'm on the global team, what is my role if learning is decentralized? So yeah, the main thing out of that, I think, is just, especially when you're interviewing, you need to understand like how your role plays into learning overall. Especially if you're on a team that affects everybody in the company. And if you find out, oh no, I'm only working on this one specific team, then find out, okay, how does learning affect this one specific team, and what are the processes for that? So that's my 2 cents. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Anyone else have some input on that, or like if you interviewed recently, did you have what did you find out about how the company runs learning?
Hi, everyone. So I've interviewed with some design teams recently, and also I'd like to include the question to ask them about their typical problems of practice. So it's going to tell you a lot about what you're going to be designing on a regular basis.
Wait, can you repeat that and like explain like that question?
Yes. So typically when you're in a smaller team or a larger team, usually they design certain activities. It could be process improvement activities. It could be related to HR. So you ask them what are their typical problems of practice and how they go about solving it. It could be, for me, it was easy to kind of understand more about I work in medical education, so some problems of practices are getting providers to improve performance. So if that's a typical problem of practice, you're going to be designing a lot of activities centered around procedural knowledge, active workshops, something that's going to be really reflective and cognitive. So kind of thinking about asking that question so you can kind of frame what that would look like in your designer role with that company.
That's excellent. Yeah, you need to figure out, you need to understand, like Kia said, especially, are you working in HR? Are you working in another specific product? Those are questions that I've forgotten to ask before when I was first starting, because it's like she said, it's going to inform the kind of work you're doing. So recently I interviewed for a job with a large company, and uh, that first role was for a specific product line, and it was working with engineers. So I would be doing a lot of technical writing and manual development, like technical manual development, which looks very different from what I've done before. I've worked with engineers before, but I was creating design education training for them, like engineering design, um, experiment design, which is different than teaching them, you know, uh, slightly more technical and less cerebral topics. And then another role I interviewed for in the same company was seated with HR. So I'd be servicing like onboarding activities and employee resource um, knowledge centers and things like that. So those jobs look different. And the technical one used like GitHub and a lot of software language. The HR was using Articulate Storyline and Rise. So also will inform, okay, what skills do I need to have? What tools do I need to use? Those are questions I have forgotten to ask in interviews, where it was like, even if they offered me the job, is it ultimately what I really want to do? So good points. Okay, anyone else? All right, so this week we were looking at like scenario building and twine. So did you all get to dig into that? Does anyone want to share? And if you did it, that's fine, because um I didn't do my reading, so I can't really hold anybody accountable this week. But if did you at least get to look at twine? And if not, let's do that now. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, also I tried to do the scenario, well, the prompt that was given, and I it was hard for me to think of like how to use twine in order to address like the phishing email scenario. Because for me, I automatically went to like having something visual displayed because I was like written out. I don't know like how I can go about writing a scenario without being like obvious of like the CEO, like I don't know, you got an email and it doesn't match the email of the CEO. What are you gonna do?
So did you feel like the prompt didn't match twine, or was it? like wasn't going to work with Twine, or that
I felt as though like that prompt, I couldn't conceive like how to make it work with Twine, but I'm interested to see if other people were able to make it work and see it in some type of way. I wasn't able to see it.
okay. What did anybody else think? Did anyone else get to dive into it or even get started on it?
I looked at it and I closed it back up because it was like very complicated to
So
me.
Twine does have sort of a learning curve, I feel. So if it's just another thing for you to take on, don't worry about that. Maybe we just focus, let's retool and focus on just the scenario building part of it all, like getting used to building scenarios. So Drea, maybe this is a great time to talk about like what do scenarios work for? What do simulations work for? What does straight typical e-learning, make a decision or pathways, what works for these? And then go from there. So let me see. Just pulling this up.
Like I do think that prompt could have been a scenario. I just think it would have taken more visuals to make it work.
And when you say visuals, you mean like examples?
Yeah, so I imagine like the scenario would be someone looking at an actual email and trying to decide, how do you respond to this email? Do you say, sure, I'll send you my password, or do you send this to like the tech department or record it or something like that?
Okay, so I was looking for an example of from the Twine site. Let me open this in another tab. Okay, y'all are going to see yourselves for a second. Don't be discombobulated. Okay, so if you haven't looked yet, this is the Twine landing page. So it's just a way to build out branched scenarios. So people use it for games, and then e-learners, specifically Kathy Moore, has kind of gotten people to start using it to build out complex scenarios for e-learning. People also use it to build interactive fiction, like they say here, and just to build out stories. So here are some samples. Let's take a look at, did I open it here? This one here, Bell Park Youth Detective. So this is just taking you to another forum outside of that, where the person has shared this. This isn't like directly Twine, but it was developed through that. And so if we take a look here, there we go. Doesn't have a very high rating, but I feel like video game people are kind of stodgy with their kudos. So really, scenarios are based on what? Like creating a prompt or a setup for your user. And then ideally in e-learning, they're making choices, right? Based on the scenario. And the choices should be in alignment with ultimately what you want them to learn or get out of it. So Kathy Moore is, I think, a scenario specialist. That's why I pointed you to her blog first, because along with understanding storytelling, I think understanding how to build out a complex scenario is as an art, because I don't think it's very hard to create a simple one where it's like, what would you do if, you know, Bob met Sally outside and she dropped a personal item and he kept it in his desk? What should he do? A, B, or C? Yeah, that's simple enough. Multiple choice scenario, but one
That's
thing.
me.
Okay, but to build out, like, to give them to make complex decisions so that they remember the choices they're making and have a deeper connection to whatever that learning goal is or objective, creates requires more advanced scenario creation. So this is an example, and with each selection I'm getting a different option, right? So this is built with Twine. This is the scenario and this is the story. So then I'm going to decide what my action should be, and that's going to take me to a different option. And so I understand what you're saying, Drea, that this is pretty heavily text-based. What I think you can do, though, with Twine is maybe not use it as your final product, but use it to storyboard your scenario. So if you're building out, you need to script or storyboard your movie or scenario or whatever you're creating. You can use Twine as a step to that. So some people will prototype in Adobe XD or Framer or whatever else, or just write out their storyboard. I see using Twine as a way to really build out a complex scenario in a way where I could maybe show it to a developer and then have them create images around that. So yeah, I can see how that prompt wouldn't work without those images, but could you build out a story that could go along with that using Twine? Does that make sense? So I think some people you can publish it as HTML5 and, have that just be your site. But also, if you just want to build something out that helps you see where those different options go, Twine can be good for that. But just all in all, building scenarios, taking Twine away from it, like if you've done this before, how have you built out a branch scenario? And have you done a lot of planning with it, or are you building it out as you go? Or even if you haven't done it before, how would you approach it? Or if ink writer. Christine says plan it. So do you mean like storyboard it?
More like write the script down first and then use the images. I'm a very literature based, text based person.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And I do want to, for me, a scenario is different than just incorporating storytelling into your course. So like I was going to use that first e-learning community project we worked on, Christine, as an example, but I actually think the things that happen in there aren't necessarily branched scenarios. It's more like we use storytelling and characters to advance the story and connect that back to the learning objectives. Whereas if we had continued to build it out where they had to make choices that affected the outcome, then that would be a full-fledged scenario, right?
Yeah, that's the latter was what I was trying to go for in writing the script, but I guess given the
Time.
timeline, we couldn't really get to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I want to show you next is actually some examples that, if you haven't looked yet, has anyone looked at these? That Kathy Moore has built out just to help you practice what a branch scenario looks like and, the consequences that she built into that, and how she also incorporated some imagery into it. But she developed this first one with Twine, And the second one is with Flash, another one with Twine, and some other tools that I haven't even heard of. She's got a lot on here now. Okay, but anyway, let's look at this first one. Can everyone see this? Okay. Did I open it? Okay, so this is actually from her partner from the start toolkit. And what she does, she also she provides, Kathy is who I mean, provides performance support for IDs. So she actually created a toolkit to help you improve your consulting skills. So if you get into corporate or you become a freelancer, how do you, her whole shtick is that you're a partner, you're not just an order taker. So how do you really partner from the start to create the learning experience that you want to create for your client? And so this is a scenario she built that really is based on how you respond to this prompt that she's given to you. So this is about meeting with somebody who wants to start a building out training, and your choices help inform the conversation and shape how the conversation goes and how you build the relationship with this client, right? So Carla is the person, and she's thankful that you met with her on such short notice, and she wants to build a course on the Soto Baldwin personality theory. Are you familiar with it? So right here off the bat, how you answer is going to inform the direction of the conversation. So that means she's from bat here, she's already started off with 3 branches of where this conversation can go. So which one should I choose? You have to say it because I can't see the screen.
Can you zoom in?
Oh, is it little? Yes, I can. How do I do that? You see it?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the first one is, I've heard of it. What are you hoping to achieve with the project? The second one is, it sounds interesting. Why do you want people to learn about it? And the third one is, I'm not familiar with it, but I'm happy to learn more about it. What does it do? So like, how would you respond?
I'm not familiar with it, but I'm happy to learn more about it. What does it do?
Okay, I'm going to click that one. So then we are at this next option. So Carla explains that it tells you about your personality type, and it will help managers show more empathy. She says she's already got slides on the USB, and it should be really easy to just take this course. So can anyone see like already what we're trying to do here? So Kathy's trying to show us, how do you from the beginning get your client to really assess whether training is needed, what is the real problem, and how do you direct the conversations so that you can get to the root of the problem? And how you respond to them is how you shape that conversation. And so the next options are, could you tell me more about the issues you're seeing? First, I'd like us to look more closely at the problem. A course might not be the best solution. Thanks. The slides could save a lot of time if we decide the scale is appropriate. Has it been shown to increase empathy? So I like this because they're not like the simplest. It's not just like, yes, I'll look at it. No, I'm not going to take this. These are all answers that I could feasibly, I have given to a client before, but what is the best response here? So what do you think we should choose in this scenario? I don't know what I would say. I think I would say in which you maintain your relationship with the SME too. So which option would you choose?
One.
Okay. So thanks. I'll be sure to look at the slides. Could you tell me more about the issues you're seeing? So then the manager thinks more about it and says they are seeing lots of complaints. And once I hear a lot is that the rules aren't applied fairly, especially with the alien leave rules. And here she's given some extra information on what that means so that I understand that. It's
That
actual,
was a real term. I'm like, I never heard of that.
yeah, actual aliens. So one person will get leave, another won't. It's not immediately clear why. And so then the next question, it's like, is that, I think we're getting to the root of it. Like, is this really a training issue? So do you think it's true that the rules aren't being applied fairly? Is it possible that managers need training on how to apply these rules? And could you clarify how the Soto Baldwin scale would help reduce these complaints? So let's choose 3. Could we clarify how the Soto Baldwin scale would help reduce these complaints? So then I see that the client, I've triggered them in some way. And so their response is not favorable. And I've reached a poor ending. So then in this scenario, yeah, I haven't gotten the best ending. And now she's going to give me information on why. So I challenged the tool too soon. And instead, I needed to refocus Carla on the performance problem and not the course of the content. I just need a clear idea of the issues. So now I have a chance to go back to the beginning and try another option in this scenario. So I think that she's really clear about. Let me stop so you don't have to look at yourselves. I know it's weird. She does a real good job at giving you options that aren't just clearly yes or no, right? Like these are all I think those were all reasonable responses to somebody who is just starting to interact with an SME, right? But I know I've definitely been in a meeting that's gone left and I'm like, why did this just end up that way? Why do I have less answers than when I came in to this meeting? But yeah, I think that's just a really good branch scenario. And it really explores how to how to use twine to build that out, but just how you can continue to get your learner to think about applying what they're learning in real time. So with the prompt I used about phishing, and maybe that was too on the nose about what to do, but you can use any Go design prompt. But I think I'm trying to think how I would approach that one without using pure visuals about what it would look like. So maybe it's more around a conversation of what choices do you go through in your own head to determine if something is phishing. But yeah, maybe that prompt is a little too technical and requires more like a simulation rather than a scenario. Is that what we're thinking, Drea?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's totally possible. So maybe we need something more that requires like a conversation between people where decisions have to be made in that conversation.
I think the example you just did clarified what twine is as opposed, because I was thinking it was more like an e-learning tool or development tool. And I can see that, like, I'm like, oh, she already has those little prompts in there. I can put that in storyline, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is a tool that I think you can use in a multitude of ways. You could use it to kind of create your own a visual storyboard of a scenario, not just a storyboard of what your slide will look like, but how do these branches work? How do these pathways work if they answer A, B, or C? But you can also publish it and put it on a site. So like
if I go through that once, then I'll be able to create one on my own without, you know, having the information or the content. But that's what I'm saying. I need the content and then I can apply.
Well, I think really it's good to know how to use twine, but I really think the skill is in developing complex scenarios. And so if you don't want to build it in twine, you don't have to. You could build it in storyline if you want, but I would like us to kind of, I said last time, I want us to pivot into focusing on like new tools and kind of a bridge between using those tools to create learning experiences and what that instructional design looks like going into that. So, yeah, let's look at building out scenarios, and then we could even let's work it out in Slack or wherever you want to do that. Like, what is the scenario that we could build out? Do we want to create something like what she created here? Has something happened at work, like a conflict scenario? There's so many things in which sometimes people are like, this needs training. Like, how could we build that out in a more interactive way in which people aren't just choosing multiple choice answers, but they're really engaging with the story and having to make decisions based on that?
Conflict is a good topic because you can use it in higher ed, you could use it in corporate, you could use it in medical, you know, because everybody has conflict in their lives and in their jobs.
Yeah, I think a conflict management one is good. Just when you're building out the scenario or looking for a prompt to build out a scenario, I would keep it as narrow as possible. Let's say if you were doing conflict management, try to find a really narrow situation so that your scenario branches aren't too all over the place, because then it could take a really long time to develop. Christine, bye Blanche. Christine mentioned a good one that was speaking out for accessibility options. I think that could be good. Like I've definitely had a situation where I was trying to talk about accessibility and I was immediately met with oh, we don't have anybody with a disability that works here. And typical, blockers to wanting to advocate for accessibility. And I didn't know how to handle that off the bat. I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. How do you bring up a topic like that to your team and get them invested in it? And if you don't frame things a certain way, how can it go left? So yeah, that's a good prompt. All right. We have a few more, or really 3 more minutes before we wrap things up. So let's keep this challenge going. And then let's work out. You can choose your own prompt, but I'll try to think of some in the Slack that we can do as well. And let's keep working on this one. I think that it'll be good.
Nyla, I had a recruiter call me today, and it was for like a university and higher ed. So it was quality matters, course building, all that, which I'm familiar with. But they also said, and they want you to have experience with HTML and CSS or CCS, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I know a lot of programs that I use have that, but I don't have the direct experience. So how do I address that?
I would ask them what they're why. Ask them what are they developing for their user population that requires that. Okay. Just ask the recruiter that, and that will help clarify a lot, I feel. And a lot of time, go ahead, Drea.
I was about to say, I just feel like I come across some job applications, some job descriptions where I feel like they want you to be able to do it all, like video production, coding, and I'm like, how can someone master all of this?
Yeah, I've noticed more and more of this. They're called unicorns. So somebody who can do all those things, and unfortunately, there are a lot of people who they do a little bit of all of that, and they're making it hard for the rest of us out here. I would say don't let that be a barrier to applying for a job, though. And then if you get that conversation, really ask them, why do you need someone to be able to do all these things? Is it that you're a small shop and you can't afford for someone else to do that? Well, maybe you don't need to be worrying about implementing some of these things if,
Right.
We can create learning experiences without I don't know, putting together a 2-hour movie and crafting 5 websites for it. Like, what is it that you're actually trying to do? Um, and then, you might find out that they really want somebody who could do CSS and all of that. But we're also in a world where a lot of things are automated, and you can learn HTML, but, you know, there are things now that will generate the CSS for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh,
I will add too, because there are some roles where in the job description they kind of just dump everything they can find about that position. It's not necessarily a business need. And also communicating to them that you will be able to be a liaison, between development. Sometimes they just want to know that you're familiar with it. So if they have
Yeah.
a developer that you understand, the coding or like the different things that they would need. So being able to say like, yes, I can be a liaison between this. Yes, I'm familiar with it, but it's not necessarily a function that you would actually be doing within the role.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's a great point. So I think like knowing the language is important. You may not need to be an expert, but just knowing, okay, I understand that CSS is a style, is about website style. I know that what HTML5 is or HTML, and I can talk to whoever I need to about that. That's good. And that's why I tell people also to learn like UX terms and learn about user experience, because if you're also building out whatever you can talk to your graphic designers about that.
Mm-hmm.
But to Kia's point, sometimes they're just like copy and pasting other job postings.
Yes, a lot of times.
And they're like, oh, I didn't know that was in there. Well, it is. So.
When I was updating my resume, I looked at my last position's job description, and I'm like, I didn't have half that stuff, but I still applied to it and I got it. And I have it now, but they didn't even know what an instructional designer was when I got there. And they had me doing everything. And I'm like, this is too much. It takes time to build a course. You have a 6 week course, you're giving me a week to, upgrade it. And it has like 2-hour videos, which need to be like whacked out and found and uploaded. And then after a year, my director said, you know what, Dorian, this was your first position. You did a great job. I put too much on you. Like, well, thanks for telling me I'm a stressed the heck out last year. But it was good learning. But now I'm feeling like I need so much more because these jobs just, like another thing was the salary. Like, oh, well, they're not paying as much as you required or you're looking for. I said, would you ask them how much room they have to go up? Because since it's a remote position, I'm saving on gas. So I might be able to come down, And I'm like, okay, I'm getting to like, I got to stop interviewing because I'm getting nonchalant about it. Like, I don't care. And I'm just saying stuff. But that's when you usually get it too.
Yeah. But they really are. If you're going into a job interview and they're asking you to be a unicorn and they're offering you like 50, 55,
Mm-hmm.
I would, unless it's with a company you really, really have always wanted to work with, I would ask them to really justify that kind of salary for what they're asking.
Right.
A lot of
For
these
sure.
jobs are asking you to do the job of like 6 people,
Yeah.
and they're
And I'm
offering you.
North. I'm in North Carolina. I know what I'm asking for is comparable to this area. I will consider something close to it, but because of the pandemic, and I don't have to go up there. But
Mhm.
your cost of living is a lot higher, so your jobs should have a better range. And she said, "Well, I'll ask them and see." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, I should definitely be making nobody as an ID, especially right now. If base salary is like 40, you can get more. Nobody should be making that. You should be getting more than that, above that. I think even in higher ed,
Mm-hmm.
definitely you should be making more than that with what they're requiring you to do, especially right now.
Oof.
Right.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
And that's why And it's important as we're working on the portfolio to kind of demonstrate the work, because a lot of times they don't even know what it looks like. So like if you're going to stand out as a candidate among everyone who's applied because you've actually have demonstrated works, and that's going to make it, have them understand like the value that you're going to add to the organization, versus everyone just like they talk around it like, oh yeah, I can do that, and like, no, you're going to explain to them like what it really would take to actually implement it and do something like that.
For sure. Yeah, somebody, if we have a few more minutes, somebody emailed me saying that they were kind of they were getting anxious about that. You need 5 to 7 years of experience for entry level jobs. And I just told them, like, ignore that. Like, if you have that's why you need to focus on your package as an ID, like your portfolio, your presence, like your ability to have the language to discuss the terminology more than what the job description says alone, because you'll talk yourself out of applying for a lot of jobs if you let that be your blocker, you know. So just ignore that 5 to 7 years of experience for entry level. Like, I don't know why they put that in there for like even e-learning development jobs. Like, no.
Yeah, I'm gonna concur with that. Like, we've had a hiring team working with our HR, and they just kind of find whatever language they want and put it in the job description. That's not even necessary. They just like literally will find stuff. Oh, we're just gonna make it sound like this and this, and we've been doing it for 30 years. This is how this job description looks. So definitely don't use that to discourage you.
Yes. I think it's a screener. It's like, we're going to get rid of people who aren't confident in their abilities. We'll screen that out initially. It's like, if you have the confidence to know that 5 to 7 years to do that, you don't need 5 to 7 years. You can tick everything off on this job description. You know how to do it. Still apply.
And a good example of the portfolio is there were 3 teachers, and they all had their, they started right in June. They had their little calendar, and they got their products uploaded and did their storyline examples, their Beyond and Robinson, and 3 of them got hired with no experience as IDs, coming out of elementary, middle, and another elementary. With one was with Amazon, and then the other one was with Spectrum. So they showed their work, and I was like jealous, but they did do their work. They worked their butts off to put a good product together, and like you said, the people saw it.
Amazon will hire you because Amazon's interview process is so much on their leadership principles. And so they did ask me about my ID background, but I spent 80% of that interview process talking about showing concrete examples of how I exemplify their leadership principles. So really they're looking at that. It's a behavioral interview. So really they're looking at, who are you as a person? I can train you on whatever you need to learn to work here.
Right.
You need to learn GitHub. I will train you, but who are you? And I mean, not to say your background doesn't matter or your experience, but you just have a lot of it is confidence. And that's why you see some people in jobs that you're like, you don't have the skills to be here. Well,
the lady I'm working with,
they knew how to do those behavioral interviews.
That was so weird. It's like I'm working with the lady who got the job I applied to, and she doesn't know anything about, building e-learning. And I'm like, this is crazy. But I'm just getting her to give me some content, so we're working together. Have you heard of iSpring pages?
Yeah, I've heard of iSpring. I've never used it in a corporate setting, but I've done the trial before. And I think it's a good, what's the word? It's like it's really affordable. So
she just got the pages. I think it was either 79. I think it was 79 a year, and it works like what is that? Rise. It has the pages, and you can upload interaction and self checks and stuff.
Yeah, so I think they were at DevLearn, and they had some cool stuff. So, yeah.
Would you do like 5 courses just to get experience or nothing?
I wouldn't do 5. No,
I don't want to even do 1, but I will do 1.
I would do. Who is this? The lady at the that you were just talking about?
Mm-hmm. The one
And
that
did
got
she ask you, or you offered?
we met on on Indeed,
Mm-hmm.
and because we're both in Fayetteville, and then she started talking, and when she sent me her information, I saw her title, and it was the job I applied for in January, and I'm like,
So she's saying that she needs help with it, with the
yeah,
stuff.
part of the content. She's been a like HR.
Do they know that you're helping her?
No, they don't. She doesn't want to, because we have to. She just brought it up today with her boss. She said that her friend will help her build because she doesn't know the technology. And
No, Doreen. I mean, I think it
That's
would
not
be.
crazy.
Okay. I'm not saying don't do one to put in your portfolio, but I would definitely be like,
Amy,
Don't do it.
She's
yeah.
trying to free work out of you and then not even tell her
She,
employer
she
that,
took your job. They
yeah.
don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They need to pay you.
Yeah, like they can pay you as a consultant to help her.
that's what I'm
That's
trying.
not even right.
Helping so many people. I need to do a consultant business. This is getting ridiculous.
Are you even sure that she told her manager that you're helping? Because I can.
We had a meeting. We did a Zoom, and then she had to leave to go to her meeting. And she sent me the content, so she had to get it approved. Because it is.
Oh, because she sent you content.
Yeah, she sent me their onboarding was one, and welcome to.
So they know who you are because you said you interviewed with them, right?
No, I didn't even. They didn't even respond to me.
Oh, I see. I see.
And the funny thing about it is that man was in my class when I was teaching at FSU, when I was training them for online. He was doing an online course. So I want my name to come up because he really was like, "Oh, thank you for being so patient." And I'm hoping, like it could, if something open, because they are struggling right now because they're getting ready to go all online. So I know I'm not doing a lot of it. I'm tired of doing
I
it.
would demand, I was going to say ask, but I would demand that you have her set up a meeting with them, or at least get something get somebody's email address, but get a meeting with somebody to be like, you guys need to pay me, because as somebody who struggles saying no and has done a lot of free work, because it's free, they're going to be more trouble than it's worth. They're going to ask all sorts of revisions. They're going to take up so much of your time. It's not until people who pay you a lot have different boundaries or pay you what you're worth than people who feel like they're getting whatever for free. And so I see this being a headache for you more than it's worth. So I would try to definitely meet with leadership.
I said, I'm still looking for a job, and she said, yeah, you told me you applied to here, but and it could be a different job because one was a instructional coach and one was an instructional designer. And she said, our budget is real tight, because I kept bringing it up. Our budget is real tight. And I told her, I said, I will help you get started because I need one piece for my portfolio. And
that doesn't sound like a place you want to work anyway. That's really strange that their budget is so tight that that they would allow someone to do free work with them. This isn't like a potential freelance client either. This is the school.
No, she's the instructional coach. So she oversees like the course development from the professors. It's a junior college. It's a community college. And she just started in January. So she doesn't have, and I mean, even opening up, the first thing I closed it because it was really like, it needs a lot of like graphic principles and I can't look at it. It's just like Cinderella.
That makes me really uncomfortable. That a corporate entity, whether it's a school, higher ed, whatever, but that an entity would be willing to have somebody do free work for them. And this is another discussion that we've had about, like, should you do like spec projects for an interview. These people will take your work and not pay you.
Yeah, they will.
So,
And even the professors were calling me, and I'm like, you know what? I said, this is your last call. I said, I will be charging $30 an hour, and that's cheap, because I know you. But
mhm.
I haven't got a call since that. But they don't like the people that are in the office aren't helping them. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't work there anymore. But we just have one question. No, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah. And especially if you're an e-learning developer and you're doing ID and you're going over content, like you can start at $50 an hour. Well, I like the especially as a consultant, like you demand those rates for the level of work that you're doing and the technical skill. And also, just because it takes you 5 minutes to do something doesn't mean you didn't spend the last 3 years learning to do it. And
Right.
so that's really where you're like, that's saying that you're not paying just for the amount of time it takes you to finish something. You're also paying for the amount of investment and skill that this person has. So yeah, I think that I've never heard, I don't know any other companies that'll be like, we just got this contractor to do this stuff for us for free, and that's what we're using. So
Mhm.
yeah, I would definitely
And I
talk to
see
them
a
as soon as
lot of these
possible.
e-learning programs are even like one site that builds like pages for Canvas, and
Mhm.
instructional coach. She was in middle school, and she was charging like $50 for a page. I'm like, that isn't even proportion, or the colors aren't
Mhm.
contrasting and all that. I said I could do that, but I don't know how to set it up. I know you said that you got that thing from Robin. She had
The
the
ID toolkit, the business, the
freelance.
freelancers toolkit. Yeah, she's got contracts in there, and Ashanti can tell you too. She's probably seen it. Um, she's got questions that you can ask your client beforehand. She's got a statement of work template. I've already used it twice for clients. It's really good. So
And
if
it's
you're like, I don't know what to put in a contract, I don't know how to get this started, I don't know what to ask beforehand, I would take a look at that.
mhm.
It's a good starting point.
Agreed. Don't do it, Doreen. Don't do it. You deserve better. I put my email in the chat. Please email me. If it's just for content, I will personally help you find content. I will
Oh,
write you some content.
Mhm.
Those people are wasting your time and taking advantage of you.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
have of things going on the side, so I want to have the energy to do what I need to do.
yeah, and really, it also sets a precedent for them to think that they could always do that, and that's you get that's how you get trapped in situations. So no, we want you a good paying job.
Exactly. And if you really are serious about going into consulting, like you're gonna write those off as volunteer hours. I'm like, whatever, set your rate of how much you should be getting paid, and then start writing off business expenses. If you're gonna buy software, you're gonna buy a new laptop, like you can actually do that as a business. Mm.
I saw someone say that they did do like this kind of work for people, but what they would do is still send an invoice
Mm-hmm.
to them to see how much this actually costs.
Oh,
And I'm not saying you should do that in this situation, but just the idea that um I don't know if people consciously take advantage of people, but sometimes you need to remind them in writing, like, this is what you're getting and what you should be paying. So maybe
mhm.
Yes.
just send her an invoice like, here's your consultation fee.
Yeah, give that to your boss.
Yeah.
I can't wait because we described the guy that I'm like, I think your boss was my student. She's like, what did he look like? And I was like, yeah. She goes, yeah, correctly big. I'm like, oh. She goes, yeah. And I'm like, that's him. I don't remember his name though, because the course was only like 4 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, so we accidentally went 20 minutes over. Sorry, y'all. But I'm glad we had this discussion, and that's actually I've been there, Doreen, where you're trying to get things for your portfolio, but I want us to support you in however we can. And so reach out to Ashanti. She offered the email, and if you need a team behind you if we need to all get together and write that email to her to be like, you know, F you pay me, let me know.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Thanks everyone. We will meet in 2 weeks. Let's just work on that scenario building. In the meantime, even if it's just an outline, it doesn't have to be a full-fledged interaction, but let's just focus on the instructional design portion of it. And if you have, I'll send out an email, but if you haven't yet, let's book time to chat just one-on-one about things going forward. And the link is in the chat, but I'll also email it out and I'll put it in Slack. And thank you for coming tonight. I'll post the recap of this convo, unless anyone has objections. And I will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye. Did everyone get the link before I close out? If not, I'll email it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to email that. I don't think I've seen that one.
Okay, I'll email it to everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye. You too.
Bye.